Welcome to It's All Right with Suzette. I'm Suzette Martinez Standring, and we are doing a writing show about crime fiction today. And we're very fortunate to have a wonderful award-winning author, Tom MacDonald, the author of Murder in the Charlestown Bricks. And we are very excited to have you here today, Tom. And your book, Murder in the Charlestown Bricks, has kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. So I don't want to give away any spoilers. I want to welcome you and to ask you to give us a little insight into the title and the plot of your book.
Thank you so much, Suzette, for having me on today. I'm very grateful, and this isn't the first time you've had me on, so thank you for your generosity. And before we start, I'd also like to thank you for speaking at my class at BC. The kids absolutely love you, and you just do a wonderful job, so thanks. You're so generous. So thanks for having me on again. Well, the title, I work in Charlestown, and I run a food pantry that serves the Bunker Hill Housing Development, which is the largest federal housing project in New England. And we locally refer to it as the Bricks. You know, so I thought, what if there were a murder in the Charlestown Bricks, and that the title just happened like that. And so without giving away too much of the plot, what I try to do with these stories is I kind of use Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, where I try to put the protagonist in a situation where he almost has no choice but to move forward. So something happens that puts him in a position where he thinks, I can't back out of this, I have to keep going forward. So it kind of takes away some of the his noble cause versus I have to do this. So it almost removes a decision from him, you know, which I think makes him a more likable character. That, you know, he's not just doing it out of the goodness of his heart.
You know, you really write with a wonderful sense of place, of Charlestown, Dorchester, different places. Yeah. And I do want to share with the audience that you were born with Boston in your blood. You know, you mentioned your career a little earlier, and you are the director of On the Vine Food Pantry in Charlestown. And you also are a writing professor at Boston College. You graduated from and also received your advanced degrees from Stonehill College, Boston College, and the University of Southern Maine.
Thanks.
And in your book, you know, just not to give anything away, but I know that the audience is eager to know, it centers around a murder. Mm-hmm. And it is the murder of someone very, very dear to the protagonist. The detective, Dermot Sparhawk.
Yep.
And could you talk a little bit about your ability to capture place and dialogue? I mean, the fact that you have Boston in your blood is so, it radiates and it reflects from your characters and all of the atmospheric writing that you do in your book. Can you talk a little bit about these special places?
Yeah, thanks for saying that. So, you know, in this case, Dermot is half Micmac Indian, half Irish. He grew up in Charlestown, and a lot of people, like at libraries, you know, when I'm talking, they'll ask, you know, is he more Irish or more Indian? And what he really is a townie. You know, I mean, that's really how he's formed. Is, you know, there's this whole like this idea of, you know, in Charlestown. You know, you hear it a lot. You know, he's a tough guy and a townie. You know, and so that's Dermot. And so really, that's his real background. And the fact that he's half Indian, half Irish is almost secondary. So his mother died when he was very young. She had a drinking problem. She died young, and the woman who's murdered practically raised him. Mm-hmm. You know, so he didn't have to go to a foster home or to an orphanage. So he really feels a loyalty to her, and so he wants to find out what happened.
I really love the way you portray him, because it is fascinating to me that he is half Irish and also a descendant of the Micmac tribe, which is part of the Algonquin Nation.
Yeah.
And yet you don't really touch racism race in it as much as the fact that he's a townie, as you say,
right.
and that sense of culture and place. And I understand that completely, because even though my ancestry is Filipino, when people say to me, where are you from, what nationality are you, I'm so tempted to say I'm San Franciscan.
Right.
So a sense of place.
Right.
So I am always fascinated by authors who can get into the mind of a character, and you really capture that townie culture so well. Is it because there's something like that in your own background?
Well, no, not really. Yes and no. Really, you know what we're Bostonians, and you know that's correct. That's what it is. And each neighborhood in Boston kind of has its own personality, its own values, and so. When I started working in Charlestown in 2003, running the food pantry for a parish over there, and this, I don't know what the word is, but these I guess stereotypes that, you know, you don't talk to the police, you solve your own problems, you know, you don't rat on your friends. I mean, I was there about 2 or 3 days when I said, this is just the way it is here. You know, you don't say, that code of silence is a real thing. But also, on the other hand, it's one of the, I don't think I've ever worked in a warmer, more caring neighborhood where people really care about their neighbors. And I think my job in the food pantry, all I have to do is put a blurb in the local paper, you know, we need cereal or rice. And I mean, I fill my pickup truck with the stuff people are donating. And so there's this idea of togetherness, but at the same time, certain expectations, if that makes sense.
Yes. Now, I don't want to give away anything in your very thrilling book, but I would like you to talk a little bit about some of the characters.
Sure.
Tell us about Cheyenne.
Well, Cheyenne, you know, I wanted Dermot Sparhawk, the protagonist. He's kind of a loner, and I think it's important for that character to be a loner, you know. But he also falls in love with Cheyenne, who herself is I think Cherokee Indian. And he falls in love with her, and so he's got emotionally, he's got a lot of stuff going on. He's in love. He's also dealing with the murder of his dear friend. And what I try to make happen in this story is that because of this, he kind of goes off the rails, makes some bad decisions, does some things that are stupid, and kind of paints himself into a corner. And then he has to try to find his way out of it. And I mean, he does things that he has an uncle named Glooscap who is a Micmac Indian, and he's kind of like an elder, you know, and I try to capture that, you know, the wisdom and this type of stuff, and someone who would give sage advice. And he's just taken aback by Dermot's actions, saying, how could you do this? What were you thinking? And I think what I'm trying to get at it, he wasn't thinking. He was acting on raw emotion, and therefore did some, you know, stupid things.
In no time at all, the reader forms a great attachment to Cheyenne. Yeah. She is now. So all these characters, are they modeled after composites of people you knew, or?
That's a great question. With Cheyenne, she kind of came out of thin air, and I have to. My wife Maribeth is my first reader and first editor, and I'm terrible with women's dialogue. I mean, just, you know, if there's something wrong to write, I write it, and I'll hear her saying, "Oh my, you know, how could you? You know, no woman would say this. No woman would put up with that. You know." But it's Dermot, you know. Of course, he says no. You know, so she. You know, it's not any fine tuning. I mean, she takes out the axe and just cuts away, you know, chunks of dialogue, and it makes it more believable, I think. You know, it
was a very believable book, and I love the dialogue, and I think that you captured very much, you know, the street sensibilities, you know, the townie culture. I mean, it really oozes with all of that. It has a lot of atmosphere. Now, I found that one of the characters was named after an actual friend of ours, Al Barisi. And it was such a delight to see his name and to see him playing a character, a hotel owner, in the book. And I wanted to know, how did that happen? And is this something that you do with your books, use real people's names?
I don't usually. And a scene came to me. What happened was, Dermot's helping out this woman whose boyfriend is a big time drug dealer, and she wants out, and she doesn't know what to do. She's scared, so Dermot's protecting her, and she's living at Cheyenne's place on an interim basis. And Dermot comes up with this idea that the other thing about Dermot, he was an All-American football player who's got injured, severe knee injury that ended his career. And his coach in college was Al Barisi. So I was thinking, geez, I'd like to have this hotel, like a safe house, where this woman can go and be protected. And my wife said, Al Barisi. And this is who Al, I've known Al since junior high school. We played football together, and I went to Stonehill. He went off to West Point. But I loved it because Al, you know him, and he's a protector. He's a person that looks out for people. So I called Al and asked for his permission. Permission. Can I use your name? And he's like, yeah. He gave me his permission. So that's how that came about. But what's interesting about that, for me at least, is because of Al, this whole scene developed because of who he is. Mm-hmm. It might have been in the beginning, it could have been kind of a flat scene where you just bring us someplace that's safe. But when it was kind of funny, that, using someone I knew, this whole scene developed, all the dialogue developed, and this whole atmosphere developed just because of one guy's name.
I personally think that the mark of a very good author is to inhabit a personality or life very different from their own. And I think about authors like Jorge Amado, who writes primarily from a strong Latina woman's perspective, or Alexander McCall Smith, who writes from the perspective of a Black African woman. And those are very, very realistic and genuine, heartfelt characterizations. And in no way do they pander to stereotypes. Right. And I found the same to be true in your characters, because Dermot Sparhawk Sparhawk, as you say, is part Irish, part Micmac Indian, and a lot of his friends come from that Algonquin nation, descended. His partner is Lewis Buckley, who is an African American, and all of them transcend stereotypes. They're just really interesting characters. But in what way you could have easily done it just from a perspective that's very similar to your own, right? Ancestry or whatever. But in what way does that play into the book? In what way did it help your book along? Or what was your thoughts about that when you were creating these characters? Well,
you get this kind of like this dance between plot and character. Mm-hmm. So your character makes a decision, it kind of changes the direction of the plot. Something happens in the plot to the character, it changes the direction of what he thinks. So it kind of goes both ways. Like something happens in the story, his friend gets murdered, his de facto stepmother kind of gets murdered. And how does this townie react? And then he makes a decision which turns the plot. And then something happens. So it kind of just keeps edging along. And so I think that to have the one thing I think is bad in the story is to have a passive character that lets things happen to him or her. And I think for good or bad, if you have a strong character that makes decisions and acts on them and deals with the consequences, the reader gets drawn in. I think vicariously we all think, boy, I wish I could be that decisive. In real life I'm not, but in a fictional story, the character can be. They can, this character might not weigh things out the way a real life character would. At the same time, you want it to be believable. So it's kind of weighing those things out.
I did enjoy that. I enjoyed that a lot, the fact that all these things happened to Dermot, but he pushed back in a very decisive way and in ways that kind of surprised me, really surprised me. And I thought that was the delight of turning each page. What also, what I felt you captured really well was the elements of alcoholism and drug addiction that kind of come into play. They're not major themes necessarily, and the plot doesn't turn on them necessarily, but you weave them in, and I felt that I learned a lot about these personalities and what they struggled with.
Yeah, I think sometimes you have the story, you have the plot, you know, and then you kind of need subtext too, you know. So, kind of like that thread that is just part of the character's life, but not part of the real story, you know. So, with Dermot, he's a recovering alcoholic. So, you know, just to kind of give the reader a little breathing space, have a, you know, like a one paragraph scene where he goes to a meeting or he talks with his sponsor. And also in the investigation, he ends up on what they call methadone mile, which in real life I see that all the time because the Greater Boston Food Bank is over that way, and I'm there a few times a week. And it's just so to see, you know, what addiction can do to people is this is what's a major problem in society. So I just, you know, try to capture that in a scene over there where he's trying to get information, you know, and all these poor people are zonked out on whatever they're on, you know. So that was just a little like a little snapshot of some of the societal problems that Dermot might see, just in passing. We all see it in passing, you know. So probably he should too, you know. Yeah. And
what was, who was your favorite character to write about and to bring alive and on the pages?
Yeah, it's always Dermot, you know, and I get carried away with him. And thank God I have my wife to say, whoa, you know, slow down here.
You know, we're going to take a break.
Yeah.
And in a little bit, we're going to come back to Tom MacDonald and talk about his process in writing The Murder in the Charlestown Bricks. So stay with us. Hi, and we're back with Tom MacDonald, the author of Murder in the Charlestown Bricks. So, Tom.
Yes.
Here we are again, and back from the break, and I would like to know more about your process. As I said, I absolutely love turning every page. I know that readers will too. It was a great ride, but I'm really baffled as to how your imagination creates these plots, these twists and turns. How long does it take you to format or to come up with the plot of a thriller like this?
That's one part I'm not really sure how that happens. Usually what happens, Suzette, is I'll have like the ending comes to me. Like it's like
comes to you.
It's like a what if this happened? What if a person was murdered in the projects, and it looks like someone did it, and there's evidence, and he's caught coming out of the building, and it was just like, what if he didn't do it? And so that's kind of how it starts. And then the next thing is, I think what readers really want is, what was the murderer's motivation? Why would somebody murder an old lady? And that has to be compelling. It can't be a wishy-washy reason. It really has to be, I think the reader needs to say, yeah, I can see why he murdered her or she murdered her, you know. And then on the other side of it with the protagonist, it needs to be, why is he vested in this case? What is it about this that he's going to stop at nothing to find out what happened? So with those type of things, we just try to create situations where maybe he wouldn't stop if he loved this woman that was murdered, you know, in a maternal way. And maybe the murderer was, if I get caught, what I'm going to jail. If I murder her, I have a chance to stay out of jail. so that the reasons, they're simple reasons, but they're strong reasons to, to pursue something.
I think it is very difficult to write in the genre of suspense and mystery because you have to come up with something that surprises the reader. That they didn't see it coming. And so often that happened to me when I was reading your book. And I want to know more about your imagining process. Do you sit catatonically and look off into space, imagining what's going to happen? Does it come to you over a period of weeks or days? Or I'm just really curious about the process of creation.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of it's kind of both. Like you start writing a scene, and something might pop into my head and say, it's, you know what it is? It's always like this what if type of thinking. Like, the scene's going along and you say, gee, what if this happened? And does this, it's kind of like, how some writing instructor I had said, it's like flicking a mobile, and everything gets all disjointed and out of, and the protagonist is trying to get it steady again and move forward, then you flick it again. And so it's almost like this alternating, knowing what you're doing, then getting thrown off course, knowing what you're doing, getting thrown off course. And then, the emotional part of it where, will this character start making bad decisions? Will the pressure get to this character? Will he start making bad decisions? It's like, a quarterback, he's in the pocket, it starts breaking down, you still got to make a decision. And so it's that. And so the plot, I think with the suspense stuff or the mystery, whatever you want to call it, noir fiction, it's just holding stuff back from the reader, so that they wonder what's going to happen next. So you give enough so that they think they're going to get, what's happening, but you hold a little back, and they'll hopefully read the next chapter. And they're very short chapters,
which I love.
Yeah. So that the reader can get to a chapter get through one pretty quickly.
Tom, this is your 4th book. And I remember I had you on the show when you had just written The Revenge of Leah McGrew, another great book that I had read and interviewed you about. And we have Dermot Sparhawk tangling with the Irish Republican Army in this book. Very different, which I also loved, from Murder in the Charlestown Bricks. Because it's not formulaic. It's something fresh and new.
Thanks.
And so in what way is that process? In what way are you affected by that process? Coming up with, you have the same protagonist, but in a very different setting, in a way that the reader is not going to say, oh, I know what he's going to do with this guy now.
Right. Well, these stories, I don't know really where they come from. In my first book, The Charlestown Connection, there was a character named Liam McGrew.
Yes. And
he was kind of a throwaway character. But everyone that read the book said, I like this guy, Liam McGrew. So that kind of led to the story, The Revenge of Liam McGrew. And I said, but so many people said it that I said, there must be something about him. And I think he's a ruthless IRA gunman, that there's something appealing about that, at least in Boston, and
sure.
So why not use it, and so I wrote the book, and you'll like this. I had it all. I had the book all. I usually don't do this, but I had it all outlined, and here's how it's going to go. And I gave the manuscript to my wife, and she read for about a minute. She said, "This doesn't work." After 6 months, I said, "What do you mean?" And so I put that aside and came back to it with a different, kind of like a different point of view, and I think it works, So.
Well, we have only a few minutes left, and I am anxious for people to know how to get a hold of your books. How can they buy these books?
Well, they're on Amazon.
Good.
And I think they're on Kindle. I'm not sure if the newest one's on Kindle yet, but it will be pretty soon. They can go to my webpage, tommacdonaldbooks.com.
TomMacDonaldBooks.com, and that's an MAC.
Yep.
DONALD.
Yes.
TomMacDonaldBooks.com.
And there's like appearances listed on there. In Milton, I'll be at the Gift Garden
Oh yes, I know, because you know, Murder in the Charlestown Bricks just launched,
Yes,
right? Just
yes.
about a week ago or
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
And I know that you had a big book signing
Yeah.
in Charlestown. It was wonderful. And so you're going to be at the gift garden. I think it's the weekend right after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
The 24th or 25th.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay, and you're going to be there to sign books right here in our very own Milton near the Fruit Center, the gift garden. And where else?
Well, I forget the dates, but I'm going to be at the Adams Branch Library in Dorchester. I'm going to be at the South Boston Library, the Charlestown Library in January. So these will be all listed on the web page.
And in the 3 minutes that we have left, I know that you teach, you're a writing professor at Boston College. And what kind of a person is best suited to write mysteries? I mean, what do you think, what does it take to be able to write something like this, in this specific genre?
Yeah, well, someone with imagination, but also I think someone that is disciplined enough to make a story believable. So you kind of get this playoff between imagination and craft, if you will, so that so that the reader can follow the story, so that your imagination can be put into words that the reader can then see what you're trying to say. And you said that the endings are surprising, and but they also, I hope, are kind of inevitable in the sense that you see an ending and you don't say, how did this happen?
Right. It makes sense.
Right.
It all fits together.
It's kind of like this pretty tight, discipline. So I think, discipline and imagination, is probably true of any story, but where there's usually a plot involved with this type of story, you really want to keep to the plot, without the reader knowing you're keeping to the plot, if that makes sense.
No, I think it's quite the discipline, and I think it takes an amazing blend of imagination and craft to be able to write a book as well as you do, Tom.
Thank you.
And so I want to thank you for being with us today, and I want to give a shout out to your beautiful wife, your wonderful, radiant, talented wife, Maribeth McKenzie, who is your soulmate, your editor, your dialogue coach when it comes to women.
Yes. She's all of that.
You're her marketing genius.
Yes.
She's a wonderful person.
Thank you. She sure is.
A wonderful person to have on your team. And I would encourage everybody to pick up the book, Murder in the Charlestown Bricks, and buy it as a gift. It's a wonderful read. And we will see you the next time on It's All Right with Suzette. Thanks for tuning in.